Let's start by taking a look at this Grades tab up at the top. We've talked about the stream. We know that our Classwork tab is where we are going to see the assignments. People tab is where we can manage students, send them emails, invite guardians, that type of thing. But the Grades tab we haven't quite gone into yet. So I've clicked on it, and you can see that I'm brought into this kind of gradebook looking thing. So let me go over some of the things that we're looking at here. Obviously, down the left-hand side, we have our students. They're in a list. Then up at the top, we have 3 different assignments. I have a language assignment here, I have a math problem assignment, and I have a reading assessment assignment as well. You'll notice that when you're looking at a particular assignment, you can see that it has the due date up at the top. It has the assignment title, and it's hyperlinked, so it's a quick way to get into that assignment and see the details of it. Underneath it says language, and it also says what the assignment is being evaluated out of. So language, math, language. One thing that Google Classroom allows you to do is it allows you to stay a little bit organized by creating these grade categories. So a little bit different than creating topics in the classwork section. So I'm just going to click on the classwork section here. Remember, these are topics. Go back to grades. These are grade topics, a little bit different. It's just a different way to organize your grade book here. So as I scroll down, we can see that as of today, all the students have submitted this assignment. Well, except for one, it's not turned in. With this math problem, we can see that there is one student whose mark has been evaluated. And with the first assignment here, we can see that this student's mark has been returned back to them, hasn't been returned back to them yet, and has been returned back, but then the teacher has gone in to revise the mark actually. So let me kind of go over that again. These items that are in black, the numbers that are in black, this assignment was out of 5. Black means student completed the assignment and teacher has marked it and returned it back. These green mean the student has submitted it, but the teacher hasn't returned it back or released the grade back to the student. Where it's green but says draft, what that means is the student has submitted it, I've gone in and I've marked it, and I've returned it back to the student. But then after that, I've gone back in and made some adjustments. So I would have to resend it back to the student. And we're going to show all that later on. I'm just kind of showing the overview of what this grades tab looks like. But before you get into, before you have a grades kind of tab that looks like this, you first have to set it up. So this is our first step. I was just kind of showing an overview now. Here's our first step, what you have to do. So up in the top right corner, it doesn't matter which tab you're in, you'll notice that you see this settings button in the top right corner beside the Google waffle. When you click on it, you get brought into the settings, and we can scroll down past general into this grading box. And this grading box is where we start to set up our grading tab. Okay. So we can see that the first option that we're given here is an overall grade calculation. I have chosen to not have an overall grade calculation, mostly because the best practice would be to not give a student a grade based on every single piece of work that they've done. So I've chosen to not have an overall grade. However, you can do by total points if you're kind of setting your Google Classroom up in a different type of way, or possibly you're just going to grade or evaluate the most recent items that a student submits to you. Then you could choose to have it out of total points, and I'll show what that looks like. And the other option is weighted categories, so I'll get to that in a second. So as we scroll down a little bit further, we see the option to show overall grade to students. So if we did choose to have total points as a calculation, we could then flip this on, and that would allow the students to see what their overall grade is. I'm going to get out of that, turn that back off. This section here, grade categories, that's how I was showing that the 3 assignments that I made were each put into a grade category. And you can choose to have them weighted certain ways. So with no overall grade or with total points, each grade category is weighted the exact same. But if we were to get into, again, not saying this is best practice, just explaining the way that what the options are in Google Classroom so we know what they are and we don't get confused by the different types of options we have. But you can also choose to have weighted by category. So you can see maybe language I want worth 90% and math I want worth 10%. Obviously, again, not best practice, but you could do that, right? Just showing the different, what weighted by category means. To add a grade category, you have your button down here, add grade category, and you could put in whichever you want. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that one because I don't want it. Important to know that as you make changes into the grading section, that we are hitting save up here in the top right corner. It needs to be saved, any settings you change. So I'm going to click save, and we can see when I go to the grades tab, we now have our grading system set up. I'm going to go into an assignment that already has a rubric, and I'm going to click on it. It's attached here, just so you can see what a rubric looks like. So this is essentially what we're making. You can see that you have the title of the rubric, and then we have our different sets of criteria. So for this rubric, there just happens to be 4 different sets: opening, plot, opening sentence, plot, characters, and setting. This section here, this text, is a description of what the criteria means. Okay, so I just kind of did it super quickly. Oops. I just did it super quickly. And then in here is the different levels that a student can receive for each criteria. Now this one just happens to be a graded rubric. I mean, I'm not necessarily sure that that's best practice. We are probably wanting to just use a rubric for assessment purposes, and then we can use the overall assignment grade as an evaluation to give to the students. But this is this one happens to be set up as graded, and I'll show the difference in a minute. So it's saying that, like, if a student gets 4 here, then they get 4 out of 4, and they would be working their way up towards 16. Not necessarily best practice. That's just the way this one is. But this is what we're working towards building, something that looks like this. So now we're going to move on to adding a rubric into an assignment. Okay. So when you're in the classwork page and you're getting into creating an assignment, we create an assignment. Again, we have our assignment window here. We're doing the kind of same process that we would for any other type of assignment. So let's call it a short story, and I'm just going to call it test, so we know that it's not the other short story assignment. You know, do the work. So you would give instructions for students what you want them to do, might list out some criteria in here, whatever you've talked about in class, whatever the focus is could be listed here. And then you might have an attachment for them. Okay, while we're waiting for that to load, we're going to come over here to this side, and we can see we want to send this to all of our students. We do often get asked the question, how can I assign it to just a couple students? Well, this is how right here. If you don't want it to all your students, you can just choose the ones you want it to go to. However, I want it to go to all the students. This is your grade category, so this is different than topic. If you could think back to the gradebook page, I had language and math. This is where we choose which category you want it to be assigned to. Now, as I already said, it's barely useful. I mean, it doesn't really let you, unless you're doing weighted categories, then it's super valuable. But if we're not weighting categories, and if we are, just kind of using it as a tracker, then it's somewhat useful in that it at least allows you to see its language math. But of course, our topic does that anyways. So I'm going to choose language anyways. I'm going to skip over points for now, and I'm going to choose a due date for it. And just click out of there, and the topic is also language. Okay, so here's our Google Doc. We could open it up and just kind of fill some information in about it. Maybe this is short story test. This would be the details of the assignment. Okay, so the details of the assignment would be here on this Google Doc listed out for the student. I'm going to close it down. I've created the assignment. Remember, it always says untitled. If I were to refresh, it would go back to the title that I've called it. But we can trust that it does know that the title is there. Again, our different options in here, whenever we go into making our rubric, it doesn't matter which option we choose. We can always attach a rubric to the assignment. So I'm just going to click on Students Can View because I've kind of made it as just the overall description of how I want them to do the assignment. So, up here I might say, please create your own doc and attach it. And I'm going to click on Rubric. So you have 3 options. You can create a brand new one, which is what I'm going to show. We can reuse a rubric, which is super helpful. So if I do short story writing next year, or let's say I'm teaching short story writing to a grade 7 class and a grade 8 class, I can choose to reuse the same rubric. So when you click reuse the same rubric, it just pops open a list of all the rubrics that you've ever created. And you just click on it and you select it. The nice thing about when you reuse a rubric, you can also, let's say you need to alter it a little bit, you can go in and you can fix it up a little bit or edit some of the criteria that you want. So you can modify or just straight up reuse a previously used or created rubric. The last option in here is to import a rubric from Sheets. So I'm not going to show that. I don't have criteria set out in a spreadsheet. However, if you were to do that, you would have to make sure that you follow the proper conventions that need to be in place in the spreadsheet. But that's kind of going a little bit deeper than what we want to show today. So let's get into creating a rubric. Click on it, and you can see we're brought into the rubric side. So here's our option to use a rubric as scoring or not. So I'm going to turn it off, and I'm just going to build the criteria out for the rubric because I'm going to use it as an assessment tool rather than giving a student an evaluation on their short story. So here's our criteria title. This is where I did characters. You have to write a description. So who is in the story? I'm just doing one quickly here. And then you get into your leveled type of I guess your levels for that criteria, sorry. So in the previous one, like I just did level 4, and then this is level 4 criteria, period. I'm just going to copy that. And then to add a new level, you just click plus. So you can, you can have, so to delete levels, you can click the little right, or click the little snowman menu there, delete, hover, snowman, delete, right? It's not there. When I hover, it gets there. So you can have one level, and I can just click save, and we'd be good with that. But I'm adding more in here. So level 3, the description. This is level 3 criteria. So this is 2, level 2 criteria, and so forth, 1, level 1 criteria. Now if you follow like Ann Davies or what have you, Sandra Herbst, sometimes what they suggest having in a rubric, actually it's not really a rubric, but I'm going to click add criteria just to get to a new criteria. This one is remember characters. I'm going to go to make a new one here called plot. How the story unfolds. What they kind of suggest having is like a MET what criteria needs to be in place. Well, this would be the description. And then they also have like a not met. Almost like a checkbox instead. So the students either met the criteria for how the story unfolds, or they have not met the criteria for how the story unfolds. So, I mean, best practice, however, whatever you're following, this rubric can kind of be set up many different ways. So like this top way is just like the more traditional level 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you explain what those, the description for that specific criteria is. A little bit different down this way, but you can see I only have two leveled options. Okay, and you can keep going on and add more, but when you're finished, you click Save, top right corner, and we can now see the rubric has been attached to this overall assignment. Okay, now the points is the area that I left blank. Here's where I choose what appears in my gradebook section. Okay, so the rubric, whether I chose to have it as scoring or not scoring, that is not what appears in the gradebook section of Google Classroom. This part is. This is what is the assignment out of. So if it's ungraded, you can keep it as ungraded. If you're doing leveled, you can do it's out of 4. Or if you're doing percents or letter grades, you can keep it out of 100. All depends which division you're in and how you're required to evaluate students. I'll leave it out of 100 just for these purposes. So I'm going to assess the students, give feedback using the rubric, and evaluate them on their assignment using a numbered point system. So once I'm finished creating the assignment, creating the rubric, deciding how it's going to be evaluated, I'm going to assign that. Okay, so, I mean, this is our standard assignment. We can see that the rubric is there. There's the information for the students. Nobody's turned it in. It's under language for grading, and it's been assigned to the 7 students in the class. When I click over to the grades section, we can see it's out of 100, and it's a new assignment. No students have submitted it yet. I'm going to show an example of after a student has gone through and they've written their short story, how the teacher uses the rubric to assess. So I just happen to have a student. So if we take a look at student 3 here, they've submitted this short story assignment, but the teacher hasn't marked it yet. So let's take a look at student 3's short story. So again, many different ways to get there. If I click on student 3, I get brought to student 3's work, all student 3's work. I'm going to go back. If I click on short story, I get brought into the assignment window where I can click on student 3's work. Or the third way is if you're just right in the main screen of Google Classroom, I mean, you can go to classwork, short story, click on the student who's turned it in. Many different ways. There's even a couple of other ways to get to it, but we just got to get to it, right? So let's go ahead and open up that student short story. And now it looks a little bit different from a normal Google Doc because we kind of have this window pane over here. And you can see that if you can recall back, we're using the old rubric that I previously made, and I didn't turn grading off on it. That's why we're seeing this out of 16 out of 4. So it's a graded rubric, but just ignore that for now. But you can see on this little window here, there's 2 tabs. We have the grading tab and we have the commenting tab. So I'm in the grading tab here. I can see I'm on student 3's work. Nothing out of 16 yet. But if I scroll down, here's the rubric. So I can pop the rubric out to take a peek at what it looks like. Can't do anything in here. This is just what the rubric looks like. No editing features in here. But you'll notice that I have my criteria: setting and scenes, characters, plot, and the opening sentence. There's these 4 little shadow boxes. We can see there's level 4, 3, 2, 1. When I hover, it shows that. So I could simply, if I know my rubric really well, I could just say, oh, setting, boom, that student got level 3. Now again, I just want to reiterate, it's showing 3 out of 4. That's just because I set it up wrong before. I set it up as a graded rubric, which probably don't want to do. You just want to leave it as an assessment tool. So just ignore the grade. If I'm unsure of what the different descriptors are for setting, I can open it up, and then it shows them to me in a nice little list here. So, oh, okay, no, it's more of a thorough use of descriptive words. I'll click on 4. Minimize it, and we can see it's now moved over to 4. Characters, 3. Plot, 4. Opening sentence, 4. Okay, so that's how you use the rubric inside of Google Classroom. We made one, we've just used one. So now let's take a look at the comment bank here. I'm going to click on the comment bank, and then we get our comment bank down the side here. But the first thing I want to do is I actually want to read the student's work, and I want to leave some comments that are more specific to the actual student's writing. So I'm going to minimize this side panel by pressing down at the bottom here, hide side panel. And then we get brought into what looks to be more like a traditional Google Doc. So I can go through and I can read the student's work, and I can say something like highlight what I want to leave a comment on. And when you do so, you get a little bubble over here on the side that is add a comment. So I'm going to click on it and leave a comment. Okay, and then we just click comment. And then it sticks on the side there in a little card, comment card. So this can be done throughout. Comment. So we can go through here, and I'm just going to, just put randomness in here just so we can see a bunch of different comments and what those look like. Comment. Okay, so we have a couple comments in there. As I scroll up, we can see that they become highlighted in the story. And when I click on them, the comment that is associated with that highlight pops out. So if we had a bunch of things highlighted in this particular paragraph, it would be cluttery. You can also see you don't have to do it in order. So cluttery, however, click here, it pops out. Click here, it pops out. Okay, so that's leaving comments within the Google Doc. The other thing I want to show is that when you look at a student's work, you're popped into what's called suggesting mode. So what that means is you can write and delete and add on top of the student's document, and it won't change what they've originally wrote. So watch, for example, if I want to delete this whole sentence out, I'm going to select it, press delete, but it keeps it there, but that wraps it in this green box and puts a strike through it. And it becomes a suggestion for the student. Your teacher has suggested to delete, and then it tells you. And then the student's given the choice. Do you want to accept the suggestion, or do you want to reject the suggestion? So the student can come right in and click the check mark, boom, and it's gone. I'll undo that. Or they can reject the suggestion. They want to keep it as is. Okay, so I didn't change anything to get that. All I did was, I mean, even if we type, right? See, as I type, the letters are in green because they're suggestions. Okay, so, and this can be done in any Google Doc. It's not just within Google Classroom. If you follow my mouse up to the top right, there's a tiny little button there that says Suggesting Mode. If it's a drop down. If I click on it, you can see there's the different types of modes you can be in a Google Doc. As the teacher looking at students' work, you're automatically placed into suggesting. When you're creating your own very own Google Doc, you're automatically put into editing. So like I've seen a lot of teachers use the suggesting mode when they have students kind of peer assessing or proofreading somebody else's work. They would ask the students to hop into suggesting mode and leave the suggestions for the student. Okay, so that's leaving comments and suggestions within the student's work. The next part is to take a look at the actual comment bank that Google Classroom offers. So I'm going to pop open this side panel again by clicking the bottom right corner. And we can see that it says Add to Comment Bank. So if you are, marking 35 short stories and you've really wanted the students to focus on, let's say, character development, you might have specific comments that you're going to use throughout your assessing of student work. So that's where this comment bank would come in handy. I mean, it's very similar to what we have for our report cards, right? So to add to you can see I already have comments in here. Excellent work, great work. I was just kind of filling it up. Comment 4, comment 3, comment 2. This is the full comment. It's not like an abbreviated version of it. That's just what I put in to fill up some space to show. But to add to it, very simple. Click Add to Bank. New comment, but this would be your full comment, add. And then you can see it gets there. It's placed in there. You could also do new comment 1. So this could be a long list, a couple sentences. Then if you hit enter, you can add another comment. So you can, what I'm trying to show is you can add more than one comment at once to the comment bank by just simply pressing enter. Press add. Those now get populated down the side. Now using your comment bank is a little bit more tricky because you have to use a wildcard similar to what we used to have to use for our comment bank and report cards. So let me show what that looks like. Same idea though, you highlight what you want to comment on. Then you have to press the little comment button. Now to pop open your comment bank, you have to use the hashtag symbol or the number symbol. So Shift 3 pops open my comment bank. Okay. Now it only gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options here, and I can't scroll through them in here. So you have to kind of know the first letter of what the comment is you want to use. So let's say I want to use one of those new comments I just made. I'll type the letter N. And now I see all the comments that start with N. So let's use new comment 1 and then comment. So that's how we add to the comment bank, and that's how we make or use it, add it into the student's work. Now the final thing here, I've made comments to the student. I have evaluated them or assessed them, using the rubric. So in the rubric section, of the assignment, when I scroll down, this is where you leave private comments. So we've left private comments in the Google Doc that are super specific about actual content of the assignment. This might just be an overall private comment to the student. So like, great work. I mean, you're just leaving feedback on the overall assignment. So let's just say that. Feedback on overall assignment. And then you click post. I can go in and I can have a chat with a student just by doing this. before even returning it. Like I can post comments here on the assignment. This is a post. Okay, so these are posts, messages to the student, just that student, on the overall full assignment. Let's return this. I'm done marking it for the student. I could now go to the next student. Now, of course, there was only one other student that submitted it, so they're not there. But instead of returning to just this one student and going to the next one, return, next one, return, I could just drill through to the next student. Nothing there, do the exact same thing. Next student, do the exact same thing. Next student, do the exact same thing. And then, once you've evaluated everybody's, there's a little drop down beside return multiple submissions, or just this one. So you could return everyone's who you've graded. But I'm just going to return just this one student's work. Actually, no, I'm going to do two because there was one that I edited. So it does show there are two to send back. So that return to the student means I'm done. I've evaluated it. Come check out your grade. Come check out your feedback. Come check out your assessment. That's what that means. Okay, so now we're kind of finished in the teacher view here. We're going to flip over to the student view. So bear with me while I do that. So let's go into the Google Classroom. I'm going to go to the class work. Teacher told me that it's been done. Maybe got an email saying it's been handed back. There is another way to see if your students don't use email. We can direct them to this View Your Work button. So when I click on it and I go to, you can see there's a filter, returned with a grade. So when I click on it, I can see that, oh, all right, my teachers returned this back to me and I got 15 out of 16. Okay, and I can see there's comments for me. All right, so I'm going to click on it. There's the overall comments. Remember where I had to press post? There they are there. When I click on view details of the assignment, this is where I can respond to those posts. Okay. Student responds back. And then here's where the student sees their rubric, how it was evaluated. Again, sorry, ignore the scores, but there's the rubric. I mean, doesn't look too much right now, but if I drop it out, I can see, okay, level 4 on setting. Drop it down, level 3 on characters, and I can read the descriptor, right? I'm going to pull those back up just so we have less screen real estate being used. Then what I'm going to do is, this part's super important. I want to go see my assignment that the teacher left comments on. That's where it's over here, where under your work. This isn't it, but this is the student's work. You can see it says their name. So this is their work. I'm going to click on it. And we can see that there have been suggestions made by the teacher. And I have comments that when I click on, I can see them. So here is a suggestion. I can click on it and I can accept it as the student. All these other comments, after I read it, I can be like, okay, yeah, I get it, resolve. Or if it was, again, maybe a comment suggesting to do something, I can do it in here, resolve it, and then I could turn it back in to the teacher. Okay, so I'm making edits in here. I'm getting the option to turn it back in. That's what's happening. Okay, so the student can close out. See, it's saying, do you want to resubmit? Because I've done a bunch of stuff with the assignment. I didn't just look at it. I went in and did things. But here's where the student sees their rubric, private comments, and where they go see the individual comments.